Cyberpunk 2077 has come a very, very long way since its disastrous launch that happened around 30 months ago, 2.5 years ago. CDPR as a publisher, as a developer, as a company has changed because of it. Perception of CDPR has also changed. It's gone from uproar to skepticism to kind of optimism. Things will certainly never be the same like those glorious, euphoric pre-release days, but the reality check CDPR has faced has brought us to a point in which the game we were supposed to get in 2020 is now in many regards coming in 2023. The journey to this point has been long, with CDPR for the last couple of years bringing about steady improvements to the game, along with the implementation of various features that many wanted day one, such as transmog and the ability to buy new apartments, among other things. They've also done a good job supporting the modding community, which has allowed Cyberpunk 2077 to flourish. There's a reason why just on Steam alone this game usually has around 30,000 players concurrently. Romance is enhanced, more interactivity in Night City, a third-person mode, vehicle combat, vehicle customization, being able to fly your own vehicle, new outfits, weapons, more vehicles, various gameplay upgrades, UI overhauls. All of this is just a few examples of how modders have enhanced Cyberpunk 2077 and kept it alive, and now in just a few months we are going to be getting the last big finale for Cyberpunk 2077 with its 2.0 reboot. That's actually what it's being referred to based on the most recent patch for the game that set the stage for Phantom Liberty. That came just a couple of days ago, that being patch 1.63, a smaller update being around I believe 6 GB on Steam and 30 GB on console, brought about even more bug fixes and improvements to performance. But Projekt Red's developers, those who are working on Cyberpunk 2077, and the game director of this upcoming expansion of Phantom Liberty have been conducting various interviews the last week or two, and the messaging has been the same. It's that they are aiming to correct the original game's course, the mistakes that they made. They're trying to make the true experience that this game should have launched in 2020. We saw this interview from Bloomberg in which it says specifically that they're aiming to redeem Cyberpunk 2077 with the expansion. Gabe Amatingello told Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, "There's an absolute dedication to what's needed to be done to make it right." Furthermore, his team are now finishing the expansion, and CD Projekt Red's board of directors, the management, gave them total freedom to make it right, including all of the time and resources that they requested. And again, this was not something that was done overnight. We've seen CD Projekt Red kind of almost silent the last year or so, and that has been them working hard at trying to transform this experience. We talked a lot about this in my last video, but Susie Hunter, who got to play about an hour or so, puts this perfectly into perspective. A lot of the changes that are coming with Phantom Liberty, or I should say patch 1.7, which is coming beforehand. I got to play a lot of Phantom Liberty, and my ultimate takeaway is that in the past 3 years, CDPR has essentially remade the entire game. Every single fundamental mechanic is improved, and that's actually what Pavel Sasko, one of the lead developers on this game, has said. Almost every single system they've improved. Leveling is now skill-based, so you're unlocking new attacks and abilities, not just getting small stat increases. Clothes no longer give you stats or armor. Stats come from your cyberware, which places greater emphasis on customization. You do have a body limit, so you can't chrome out too much without taking a health point decrease, which makes you actually think about how you customize yourself. The police system is everything you wanted. Max tack comes in via dropship. Police and gangs now chase each other and you. Leveling cyberware on a new skill tree unlocks special abilities like overdriving your gorilla arm punch, smack enemies into the stratosphere. AI is vastly improved. They block and hide behind cover. The melee combat feels a lot better, and dodging is now its own button. You can anime zip to a point now instead of doing that tiny hop. There's also stylish executions on its own button, and you can block bullets with your blade weapon. And again, what was most surprising about all of this is that CDPR didn't really use any of the presentations, the summer gaming events, to really hit home on this huge update, patch 2.0, which I thought was patch 1.7, but no, it's literally 2.0, which makes sense because this is a huge overhaul to the experience that's coming before Phantom Liberty. This was confirmed by a community manager at CD Projekt Red, Lalea, saying the next big update is not part of the expansion. No, it will be released before Phantom Liberty. When that is going to be, that'll be announced later on. It seems like CDPR is still having discussions about that and what content will be included within that free update versus the paid expansion of Phantom Liberty. Now, within the last couple of days, we have learned a lot more about the upcoming content for Cyberpunk. It is quite a bit. Obviously, we talked extensively about the skills overhaul, the cyberware overhaul, and all the other stuff that has been changed, but we have gotten a better idea on other aspects of the experience that have been altered, especially in regards to Phantom Liberty and some of the new content that's going to be happening within that. We had PlayStation Access, they got a preview session with the game, and first of all, they revealed that there's actually going to be a vendor for iconics, which I thought was pretty cool, especially because there's some really nice weapons and stuff that you can miss out on if you're not careful within the base game. This is what they said from their preview session.
And then they've also added just loads of little cool bits and bobs. For example, there's a very special vendor who you'll encounter. Yes. And what makes them special is that they can offer you weapons with the golden background that you may have missed in the base game. So then you can go visit them. And if you did miss them, there's an opportunity for you to obtain them through them as well, which is really, really cool.
And I do think that this is part of the black market of Dogtown. This is a place where trading is going to be. There's some unique items that we can pick up from the vendors here. There's also unique cyberware. Some of it's called dangerous, it's powerful. It was mentioned in this preview gameplay video that was uploaded that I think a lot of people missed. It's just a small little video going over the black market, but it's mentioned that some of the cyberware will have the ability to air dash, we'll be able to see through walls, and they even mentioned us being able to change our appearance to, you know, stop the cops from being able to find us and stuff, so that'll change the heat. So I'm guessing we'll go from like 5 stars to 0. So, and that is apparently a type of cyberware. So that's what I mean. There's different layers that are being added, substance that can really alter the entire experience. That's why playing Cyberpunk 2077 for the first time right now doesn't seem to be, like, a lot of people are saying, wait on that. Wait until Phantom Liberty comes about, wait until patch 2.0 is here, because this game is going to be totally transformed. And in addition to this black market gameplay, we also get a little bit of a preview to the police force that controls this area, because it is not the NCPD. Pavel Sasko goes over their role within this DLC.
The Barghest is the authorities of Dogtown, and they are more dangerous than NCPD. When you as a player commit crimes in Dogtown, they are the guys who are going to chase you. We have completely overhauled the police system. Police actions are more believable, dynamic, and diverse.
And that's actually what I'm very curious to see. It's going to be seeing how they are different than the NCPD. Do they have unique abilities? Are they more hostile towards V? Do we see them attacking other, citizens like we see in this gameplay preview? Going to be very interesting. And now going back to the PlayStation Access video that I just brought up a little bit ago, there actually was some unique gameplay that was shown within that, showing off some of the new upgrades to various systems within the game. But first, and as has been on the screen right now, is the Berserk mode. It looks like more of a visual upgrade, but it definitely looks very intense and a lot of fun to use. We've heard a lot of people discuss about the new melee movements and finishers and stuff. We actually got a look at a new Mantis Blade finisher here. In keeping with new melee finishers, the Kukri knife, I believe I'm saying that right. It looks like V stabs his enemy with it. It looks very brutal, very cool. And I do want to give a shout out to YouTube user Pablo397 for these finds, but if you slow down the footage, as you can see, the bounce back health kit has been changed, another thing that has been overhauled, its look and such. And again, sticking with that subject, it does look like the healing items and our grenades now automatically recharge, which does put into question, the 300 of them that we collected. Is that now obsolete, maybe? Here next, we have our first look at some of the new weapons and mods, and I'm actually very excited about some of these mods just because they bring different abilities and such. And in the base game, there wasn't a lot of that, but here we have plus 15% critical chance with ricochets, minus 25% bullet spread, and then a couple of others that are just for specific weapons like smart weapons. And then here we don't know necessarily any of these new weapons, but they look very cool in their design. And with the introduction of new enemies, we have our first look at some of these special abilities of a Barghest soldier. This one specifically, a sniper, has a combat stim, charge jump, and flashbangs. Very cool, very hopeful that we see a lot more of this with the different enemy variety that we see in this DLC. And then if you look very closely at one scene during this gameplay, you actually see some new unique NPC interactions or dynamic events. We have a couple of them, looks like they're trying to rob this little machine here, and I really do hope that we see a lot more of this within the DLC and also the overall open world of Night City. It gives a little bit more life to the world, something that I do feel like was missing from the base game, something a lot of people have brought up over time. And lastly, finally, we actually have the first spotting of the relic points. These are things that we'll find within Dogtown, and we'll be able to use these points for the new skill tree, which have certain, unique abilities that we'll be able to use for our character and our playstyle. And shout out to Reddit user Mr. Nobody for these finds from this PlayStation Access video. But first up, he mentions that new weapon mods in UI, clothing no longer has mod slots. Regardless of rarity, there's also a new weapon stat, armor penetration. And I just really do dig this new look. It gives you a better insight, I think, to how the weapon performs versus others. In this next image, it says new weapon mod to reduce recoil, and as you can see, minus 20% recoil when aiming from cover. We have a new iconic tech shotgun. The Order is mentioned here. This corporal exclusive iconic weapon now has 50% armor penetration, and it appears its bleeding status effect has been removed. As you can see here, a quick time event where you may need a high body attribute. I'm hoping we see more of that within this DLC. That was one of the criticisms of the base game, was that our stats, the role playing, it really didn't matter all that much. There wasn't enough of this, and I think CDPR has heard that criticism, as you can see with this first instance of needing maybe 20 body to do a certain action on President Myers. We have a new iconic thermal katana, Arata, as seen in the Tools of Destruction trailer from 2020, something that didn't make it into the game, but we also have a look at the weapon later on, and it actually looks pretty cool to see how it works in the actual game. We have another new smart gun mod, plus 12.5% larger smart targeting reticle. So again, it looks like lots of new mods, something that I definitely really do appreciate. Attributes and their associated skills have been renamed. This one's called Headhunter, and then we have the engineering skill tree has now been called Engineer. And as this Reddit user points out, it seems there may be a kind of defensive meter for enemies. Perhaps once it's depleted, they can't block melee attacks or dodge projectiles for duration. And as we have heard from previewers, the enemy AI has been improved, and this may be one of those added layers to, some complexity with these interactions that we have with them. We also have a new smoke grenade, which was shown, and the optical camo has actually been tweaked, with it now saying minus 70% visibility to enemies for 6 seconds, making it more difficult for them to detect you outside of combat and hit you during combat. I believe originally it was just like completely they couldn't see you, so this is actually a very interesting change. Now, moving past this PlayStation Access video, we did get some more screenshots from other previewers. First, we just have one from Songbird, an interaction that we have with her. We also have one with Solomon Reed in a car, not sure where this is exactly, but we also have our first look at the weaponized vehicles UI that pops up once we first have that ability to use them. Some cars are equipped with various weaponry like machine guns, and we have here how we can use them in the game, so that's pretty cool. I honestly cannot wait to use that in action. And next here we have is our first look at the skill tree, and what's very interesting about this and what pops out immediately is the fact that Reflexes no longer has those specific subcategories of like blades, handguns, and assault weapons or rifles. What is now here is one concise space, and it has the main abilities, and that seems to have like sub abilities that you can use to improve that main ability, which I feel like is better for an RPG in my opinion, but I know some people preferred the old system of just having like plus 3% for weapon damage and you get better health and stuff like that. But I think that this is better optimized for different play styles and such. But it seems like I would assume that if you improve all of these abilities to their max, you unlock a super ability, like these ones that are at the top. I would assume that's what those are. And then obviously the legend ability is probably, you have to put 20 points into this Reflexes attribute, which kind of went with the base game. But very interesting, the changes here. We also, one thing I do notice with the Reflexes is the fact that we have a new one at the bottom, which seems to be just for vehicles. If you look very closely, it looks like V jumping out of a vehicle, so maybe that's a new ability for vehicle combat, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, this whole system has been overhauled. It's going to be very interesting to see how these skills now work, and if it now fits for us playing different styles to the game, because originally you really could just be everything all at once, and that was one of the criticisms that a lot of people had with this, being an RPG, is the fact that you didn't necessarily need to roleplay as a certain style, as you could be everything all at once. And it is worth mentioning that on the bottom side, where you'd get like a free perk point if you did certain actions with that specific attribute, it doesn't seem to be here, but it was spotted in some of the gameplay. So again, this is a work in progress, so I'm very curious to see how all of this comes together and how we use it. Continuing on next, we also did see Digital Foundry with a breakdown of Phantom Liberty's recent trailers and gameplay. They got the different versions sent to them by CDPR, and it's an early indication that things are looking good. It's 3 months away, and there does seem to be some dips into the low 40s on both PS5 and Xbox Series X, but it does seem like within firefights it's often in the upper 50s, and even Pavel Sasko, one of the lead developers on this, said that there's still work to be done and we're focused and determined. But what's really cool about some of this footage is you can see the differences, the shadows, they look great on PC. We also saw a very early glimpse at one of the new mechanics that's going to be available on console, and that is ray traced reflections. Previously there was only shadows, so this is a big get for console players. It's going to look even better, especially for those, playing for the quality version of the game. We have also now found out that another character from the base game is returning in some capacity with this upcoming expansion. That would be Lizzie Wizzy, which is very interesting. We've also seen CD Projekt Red promoting this upcoming expansion on their TikTok account of all places. We've seen some never before seen gameplay uploaded there. This clip showing Female V riding a motorbike onto a ramp, just kind of hinting at some of the different ways that we can go about quests. This one specifically being the opening quest for the expansion. And then in the next clip we get more of an overview of the black market. We actually see a robot vendor with a beanie that looks kind of funny, and then there's just other random NPCs and personalities that make up this zone. And next, Pavel Sasko actually did an interview with Spider's Web, a Polish gaming outlet, and they went over a lot of really cool details that are going to be included within Phantom Liberty. First up, he actually talks about the criticism with cars and how, there wasn't a lot of AI or anything connected to vehicles. You could shoot straight through the tires, and that was a criticism that a lot of people had. Pavel Sasko now says that you're actually able to puncture tires, and there's a corresponding status message when you have a flat tire, and you can see it in the environment. Vehicles are still able to run with a flat tire, but they do so much slower. In addition, such a car wears out faster, and at some point it straddles off the road, but there is no immediate immobilization. We bet on a more realistic solution as in life. And another example is that when riding a motorcycle between opponents, the player can take out a katana and use the blade to puncture their tires. So I just love those really cool details, especially in regards to vehicles, and now the introduction of vehicle combat. You need stuff like that to, have those interactions mean something. Next in this interview from Spider's Web, Pavel Sasko talks about how the loot system has been changed. We tried to make the picked up weapons actually better and more interesting than what the player already has in the inventory. We also changed the system of sellers so that from now on, each of them actually has their own unique offer. And in regards to Dogtown, whether or not there'll be a loading screen or anything that, disconnects us from Night City and then having to get into Dogtown, that's actually not going to be the case. Sasko says, our world has grown and you can easily move between every area of it. Dogtown is just another part of Night City, and you will enter it without any loading screens. There will be no barriers. And on the subject of those who actually do not buy the expansion and whether or not we see Dogtown in the distance, Pavel Sasko says we've already developed it, but we don't want to talk about it yet. We don't want to reveal all the details. So that may be something that we actually see, in the distance, that preview of what Dogtown is for those who haven't bought the expansion yet, when it does release, obviously. Now, on the subject of how massive Dogtown is as a new region, as part of Pacifica, it has been said that by Sasko that Dogtown is a large and diverse district, but it differs from Night City in fundamental ways. We focus much more on the interiors. In Dogtown, you will enter many more buildings than in the base game, where most of the action, however, took place outdoors. Now, on abandoning the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One version, Sasko says this is actually what unlocked the ability for CDPR with this upcoming expansion and the 2.0 version of the game, the big reboot. He says the first thing that comes to mind is the AI changes. Thanks to them, we're able to add real-life chases and a completely new police response system to the game. AI requires a lot of processing power, therefore new platforms, the next-gen consoles, allow for dynamic events in the open world, but also to improve elements such as combat. Now clashes take place with more opponents at the same time than ever before. The scale is much larger. That is what we get for them now being able to ditch the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One versions, as I said long ago that they should have done even before the game released. Now, one thing that a lot of people have picked up on within the Phantom Liberty trailer is a casino-like location that kind of seems odd from Dogtown, because Dogtown seems to be very run down. It just seems very different. And that's why a lot of people believe that actually we're going to be going into the unfinished casino that was in the base game, but you had to go through coding, you had to go through some hoops to find it. But originally it seemed like it was supposed to be in the base game, but for whatever reason it didn't make it. But now it does look like maybe it is finally coming. And it is worth mentioning that in another preview for coming from Game Informer, it was mentioned by CDPR that the entirety of Phantom Liberty will not be taking place just in Dogtown, but the narrative will take place all across Night City. So does that mean we could be seeing the casino introduced? Because the interiors, everything does kind of match up, and it does it does make sense for it to be introduced finally. And last but not least, we have the romances. This was a major part of the base game. I think narratively it was probably the best part of Cyberpunk 2077. Panam, Judy, River, Carrie, their character-focused questlines were a standout. The relationships that RV could establish with them and their impact on the narrative throughout the game, the endings, it was just fantastic. CDPR did a great job putting all of this together, and it really, really worked. I felt emotional with these characters, something that I don't feel with many other games. And that's why it is a bit of a surprise how they're going about romances in Phantom Liberty, and it is that there is not going to be any further romances available. So I assumed when we first had Phantom Liberty announce some of the characters, Alex, Songbird, President Myers, Reed, Hansen, we would be able to maybe romance one or the other, or maybe two of them, but no, that's actually not the direction they're going to be going in. This was confirmed by CDPR's global community director Marcin Mamat. He actually responded to a tweet of mine saying, "While we add/change tons of new stuff to the game along with the release of Phantom Liberty, romances are not going to be part of that. V is going to be focused on the intrigue they got themselves into." But this isn't quite where it ends, because in a Kotaku article there was some interviews about this, and one of the quest designers, Despoina Anateka, was asked about this, and she said there will actually be some content with our previously established romances, but for the most part it is a spy thriller. And then furthermore, Pavel Sasko told Kotaku that we have included some connections in places where it made sense between the main game and expansion, but I don't want to go into detail. We try to make it good. This is always our idea, you know, to just like take care of the player, that enjoy those relationships. So there will be some more romance content. It's being compared to like The Witcher 3's Heart of Stone expansion. And if you're not familiar with that experience, there was a couple of additional dialogue options that we had with Yennefer after it was completed. So that's probably going to be the case with Phantom Liberty. But people have been waiting a couple of years of new content with these characters just because of how beloved they are. And I understand the issue with creating new content because of the fact that Phantom Liberty takes place right in the middle of the main narrative of the game, while those original, you know, quest lines of Panam, Judy, and such already, you know, takes place during that period of time. So I guess there is an issue with, you know, overlapping new content within that. But yeah, I am kind of disappointed that we're not going to see much more than that, but we'll have to see. Hopefully it is more than just a couple of dialogue options, just because of how long we have waited for this. But maybe there is a future with these characters in future games, because CDPR is preparing for the next Cyberpunk game that's going to begin full development right after Phantom Liberty wraps up, I assume. The Boston studio they established is going to be taking front and center with the development of that. Either way, that one slight disappointment aside, there's a lot to be excited about for the future of Cyberpunk 2077. Phantom Liberty looks amazing. I really am intrigued by all of the new content that we're hearing about it. And remember, there are multiple endings to this expansion, as well as a new ending for the base game, which maybe in that capacity our romances are involved. And then obviously the overhaul of patch 2.0, which is like a reboot of the entire experience. There is good reason to be jumping into Cyberpunk 2077 when September rolls around. And I want to know, what are you guys most excited about with this, the upcoming content for this game? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video, or if you found any informative value, and consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.